So another Krunker YouTuber slash Twitch streamer called Kaarson, with 2 A's and a K, recently published a video on his YouTube of him beating a map called SUPER PARKOUR, stating that it was the oldest parkour map in Krunker. Now as luck would have it, I've actually made my own video on this map all the way back in January of 2019. And to save you the cringe, I'll sum it up as me getting pissed off at a barrel, and stating that it was the oldest map in Krunker, or at least the first one I played. And, well, apparently it's not. As it turns out, upon doing my own research and with the help of other map makers and PEL members, it was apparent that there are even older parkour maps than SUPER PARKOUR. In fact, parkour maps have been around in Krunker since pretty much the very beginning, and a lot of the old ones kinda suck. So let's play them, because I'm an old fuck who needs his fixin' of nostalgia. Now there are many old maps that are from 2018 that you probably know about, like Keep I's B-Hop level 6.4, and the many versions that came before 6.4, all the way down to B-Hop Levels, which was published on September 12, 2018. And there are also other maps like Al's quote-unquote new parkour maps, parkour with a question mark, and yeah, that one too. If I talked about every single map that came out in 2018 period, I'd be here all day and I'd probably have another 20+ minute video to edit. So I think for the purposes of this video, I'm going to start with none other than my own first map, which is a parkour map that I published on August 14th, 2018, called Heavenbound. Now I want to go off topic for a bit and talk about the original version of Heavenbound. Alright, the original 44-point version of Heavenbound that was published more than 2 years ago is missing. I'd have all the other versions dating back to the 12th of August, but as for the most important one, it's fucking missing. Because of course it is. And I think I know where it is, but it's somewhere I can't get to. You see, I made the original Heavenbound on my old desktop computer, and the last thing I ever did on that old desktop was publish Heavenbound. And August 14th, 2018 just so happened to be my first day of college for game art and design, where I was told that I needed a computer better than my i5-4460 and GT730 setup to run the software properly. So that weekend I got a new laptop with a 1060 Max-Q and an i7-8750H, which is the one I've been using ever since to make maps, videos, and other stuff to this day. But when I went to transfer whatever files I had on my old desktop, I guess I forgot to put the original map file on the flash drive when I took it over, and as such, I don't have it on my current laptop. And the thing is, I still have the old girl right beside me, but I don't have a monitor to hook up to it, as I got rid of the old monitor to make space for my laptop. So I guess I probably have it, but I just can't access it right now. So unless the original version is floating around somewhere with the devs or elsewhere, I don't have the original version of Heavenbound, and until I get a monitor to use, I'll probably never find it. Nevertheless, the original Heavenbound is my oldest map, and it's a good point of reference as we go into some of the older maps I'm about to discuss. Another old parkour map is Parkour-Level 92 by Level 92, which was released on August 11th of the same year. It's structured like a levels map at first, but then it sort of turns into a weird kind of map with a bonus section that isn't really a bonus section because it's an entire half of the map. All in all, quite an interesting map, if not obviously dated. Next is, well, a collection of parkour maps from the same guy, the Tailhead. They all came out between August 9th and 12th, except for that one, and they're all very similar in design and theme. Nostalgic and simple, but bare bones and sometimes broken, which is a trend you'll begin to see in many of the coming maps. Now this is a map I've actually covered before, BR Badges by General Mudkip, published on August 5th. This is one of the first Krunker parkour maps to really push the limits of difficulty, and even if it has awful lighting and some glitches, it's pretty much the original level 6.4, and it still kinda holds up to this day, even if it insists that you use anything other than runner, unlike every other parkour map. Next is Easy Parkour, which was published on August 4th by NoobLol VCL. This is the second parkour map I've played besides SUPER PARKOUR, and actually, now that I think about it, I'm not sure which one I played first, but whatever. It's a bunch of floating cars and floating crates and barrels and stuff. It's ugly and rudimentary, but good god is it nostalgic. And speaking of SUPER PARKOUR, I already kind of spoke of SUPER PARKOUR, so I don't really need to speak of it again. It was published on August 3rd by HBusters/Jim25/ a bunch of other names. Moving on. On August 1st, a map called Parkour Ruins was created by Ataris. Now, Fun fact, this is the very map that got me into map making in the first place. Back in the day, the map editor was a pain in the ass to use, and consequently most maps were ugly and very amateurish. But even with the very heavy limitations of the editor, a tourist managed to hammer out this map, which proved to me that good looking maps could in fact be created in the map editor, thus giving me the drive to start making my own maps, even if half the map may as well not exist, thanks to a very significant skip that has only gotten easier and easier over time. Parkour Ruins is one of the most influential parkour maps I've played. Now I'm going to briefly talk about oAuzi, as while it was published on June 21st, 2019, it was finished sometime in August. I don't know the exact date, but all I know is that this map is insane, both in terms of difficulty and in terms of quality. Like, holy shit, this was made in August of 2018, which is both believable and unbelievable at the same time. And the only reason why it wasn't published was because the map surpassed the object limit at the time, but if only it were published back in 2018 without any issues, just imagine the impact this would have had. Another map I want to mention is this Parkour Castle map, and the weird thing is that I can't pinpoint who exactly made this map or when, as it's been published by many different map makers on many different dates, meaning it may very well be much older than anyone may think. And as for the map itself, it's as old school Krunker as you can get, with default textures, no color, props everywhere, and no score zones. But once you get over all that, it's okay. It's just okay. Now at long last, we're in definitive July territory. Something to note here is that July 26, 2018, or July 27th depending on your time zone, was the first day map makers could actually publish their maps to Krunker as part of the 0.9.9 update. So these maps are the oldest of the old, among the first parkour maps ever to be published in Krunker. And for help in actually finding some of these maps, I took advantage of a neat little trick in the Krunker Hub's game page, courtesy of Solar13. Where if you search maps by KR and scroll all the way down to the maps with 0 KR donated, you'll find all those maps are sorted by the oldest instead of newest. And one such map that I found this way was a quaint little map called Ascension. It features some crosses and lots of default textures and planes, and you know a map is old when it has non-edge noise planes as platforms. It's also surprisingly more difficult than expected, even with non-FPS jumping and wall jumping and sliding and everything. And in terms of Krunker years, this map is probably as old as Christ himself, and it really shows in the outdated design. But even so, it's the oldest map I could find that was, finished and had some semblance of effort put into it. And there are some other less notable parkour maps from these first few days that are only worth mentioning for the fact that they're old. Maps like BR Ball, which was published by Meme Kid on July 28th, Parkour_Parkour L, and Parkour Event by L Big OP, which were all published on July 31st. Alanova's Parkour and YouTube Parkour by Alanova on July 31st. They're pretty much the same map. And Zana Battle Royale Smiley Face Parkour by European Union SEI Los Angeles on July 28th. There are some other maps that were made in July that may have been parkour maps, but honestly they were so empty that I couldn't really tell. Nevertheless, these maps are among the first, and are worthy of at least an honorable mention. And among these maps is a map called Parkour V0.1, published by 432 Divafa. What's odd is that this map's map page states that this was published on August 4th, yet according to oAuzi, a film member who's been helping me research for this video, the map was technically published on July 26th. Not only that, but the map code for this map was published on Reddit by u/KingXVX, so it's very clear that this is the oldest published map on Krunker, and it even existed before you could even publish maps at all. Now if you watched my BR Badges video back in the day, I at one point mentioned a long lost map that first introduced the wall surfing mechanic. And it turns out that map, otherwise called Hail Satan's Masturbatory, yeah, I shit you not, is widely considered not only be the first map to introduce wall surfing, but also to be the very first parkour map ever made in Krunker. In fact, it's so old that it isn't even published on Krunker itself. This was finished on July 16th by Patrick Star, and has been worked on since at least before July 15th. And the reason it was considered lost all this time was because the format of the mod files back in the day could no longer be read by the map editor. And oAuzi had been spending God knows how long going into the text file itself, changing certain values and objects to fix the map so that it could be played. And aside from a few colors and the pixel art being off, the map has been restored to its original intended form. So shout out to the legend oAuzi for making it so that I could finally play this map, and mad respect to this huge legend packaging star for being the biggest OG of all OGs. Now I know all you kids who are just starting to play Krunker for the first time are probably wondering why the hell I'm even bothering with these old maps, like they're outdated and irrelevant now. And you know what? You have a point, these maps honestly kinda suck. Alright, taking off the rose tints reveals a bunch of grays and browns and whites and a whole lot of nothingness. Many of these old maps aren't even complete, like someone just slapped some cubes down at spawn point and a camera position and deemed it worthy of being published. But at the same time, these old maps are responsible for inspiring all the parkour maps that came after. They didn't waste time trying to be super flashy, they didn't have like 50 different KR donation boxes throughout the entire map, they didn't have those obnoxious rainbow thumbnails, in fact they didn't even have thumbnails in the beginning, they were just, you only had the name of the map to tell you what it was. They didn't have jump pads or wall jumping or any of these gimmicks that many of the new map makers can't seem to shy away from. And they didn't even have triggers to work with. They are just boots to the ground, regular ass parkour. And it was awesome. Alright, every single new map back in the day was exciting, especially considering the limitations of Krunker back then. And even now, I find myself playing nearly every new parkour map that comes out nowadays, longing for that nostalgic feeling I used to get, even though it's just not the same. Like no shit, it's been 2 years, what do you expect? Stop trying to act like an old hat for fuck.